With Logan coming out just in a couple weeks, I thought it'd be good to revisit some of the Wolverine movies that we've seen already, and I need a little help with that, so I've invited Jack from Jack's channel of stuff over to my channel to help review this movie. So we're going to start with him. Jack, take it away.
What is up, Patrick? Thank you very much for letting me be back on your channel to talk about the Wolverine. Up until last night, I had never seen this film before. In fact, I've not seen a lot of the X-Men films. I'm not really an X-Men aficionado. I've only seen a couple of the films, so I know that before hearing my thoughts on this film. I'm judging it as a film and not an X-Men Wolverine adaptation. Getting right into it, by far the best thing about this film for me was Wolverine's story arc. Wolverine is pretty much immortal. He has all the healing powers, but he doesn't want that anymore because he's always being haunted or greeted by visions of Jean Grey, who I learned that he had to kill at the end of X-Men The Last Stand because she was just going all sorts of insane. And he doesn't want to live with that guilt anymore, and he just doesn't want to go on and live forever when he has nothing to live for. And sooner or later he does lose his healing powers, and that is by far the best part, seeing Wolverine actually vulnerable in this film. Every time he gets shot, he's all dazed and confused. He has no idea what's going on. His wounds aren't healing as fast as he used to. He gets hurt quite a bit in this film, and it adds that tension. It adds that feeling that he actually could potentially die in this film, even though we all know Wolverine's not going to die, but at least the tension's there. Outside of that Wolverine story arc, there were a couple of things I did like about the film as well, like the character of Yukio, I thought was a straight up badass, and also everything revolving around these ninjas called the Black Hand. I thought that was really cool, especially that scene where they're going around that estate and they're just killing all the bodyguards really quietly, not making a noise. That was really cool. I just wish we got to see a little bit more of them in the film. And the action fight sequences were entertaining, but I expected that. Going into the Wolverine, I expected the fights and the action to be entertaining, so it's not like a really big positive, but it's still a positive because I was entertained in those scenes. Getting into the things I didn't really like about the Wolverine, the first 2/3 were concentrated on this party of villains. These are the guys who are trying to kidnap the main girl in the film. They're the guys behind everything. Okay, so these are the main villains in my mind. But then we get to the last act and it shifts focus from that set of villains to a different set of villains, and it just felt kind of jarring because we spent the first 2/3 focusing on this party and the last third has nothing to do with that party at all. And speaking of the villains in the last third, the character of Viper, I don't know the actress's name, but I felt she was kind of overacting just a little bit. Just the delivery of her dialogue, especially when she's captured Wolverine in that thing, she's holding his hands down and she's talking to him, I was just like, she's overacting just a little bit. She just doesn't feel believable in her dialogue delivery. Also, halfway through this film it slows down and Mariko and Wolverine start bonding and they have a relationship, and I just did not really buy their romance at all, really. They just didn't feel like people who would fall in love to me, especially after that huge big fight at the start. She's trying to get away from him, she's like, stop following me, and Wolverine's, being really persistent, trying to protect her. They just didn't feel like people who would fall in love to me, and I felt like their romance was a little bit forced, and for me it slowed down the middle part of this film, and I was like, okay, let's just get to more awesome Wolverine stuff. And lastly, outside the main Wolverine story arc and the cool ninja stuff that I mentioned earlier, there's nothing really about this film that I found really stood out. There's nothing about it really that was that memorable or worth talking about. I mean, the direction was fine, and some of the plot points were a little bit predictable, but there's just nothing else really about the film where I can just talk about it and go, oh, this was really good, this was really good. It's just a standardly done film. That's not to say I was not entertained during the Wolverine, because I was entertained with this film for the most part. Like I said, the Wolverine stuff, him losing his healing powers and being vulnerable, that was by far the most compelling part of the film. There was some really cool action sequences and some really cool stuff with the ninjas, but like I said, the villain shift was a little bit jarring. The romance between Wolverine and Mariko felt forced to me, and there was nothing else about the film that was really memorable and nothing about it that really stood out to me. But like I said, I was still entertained with this film. I don't think it's a great film, but I think it's a decently entertaining film. I'm going to give the Wolverine a 3 out of 5. Once again, thanks Patrick for having me back on your channel to talk about the Wolverine. I can't wait to do the next collaboration. Can't wait to watch Logan. That looks like something really special. Can't wait for that film. So Patrick, back to you.
Thanks again, Jack. Guys, go follow Jack on Twitter and make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Go to him. He's awesome. The Wolverine is Hugh Jackman's 6th outing as portraying the character of Wolverine. And with Logan soon to be released, that will be his 9th, which is crazy. I don't think that there's any other actor that's played a character for so long other than Hugh Jackman. The story focuses more on Wolverine's demons. With losing Jean Grey and isolating himself from the world, he's struggling to find a reason to even live anymore. He ends up traveling to Japan to see a World War II Japanese soldier whom he had saved from an atomic bomb during World War II that is currently on his deathbed. He's dying. Once Hugh Jackman arrives in Japan, he's having to go face to face with both his demons as well as for the first time his own mortality. Now, as Jack kind of mentioned, this is one of the first times that we get to see Wolverine in a more vulnerable position. His healing ability doesn't work the way that it used to. Something has happened to where if he gets shot a number of times, he very likely is going to die. And that raises the stakes so much more when there's an action sequence going on in this movie, which is one of the best parts of the Wolverine. This movie is crammed with a lot of action sequences, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're all very well done. One of my favorite ones especially is the bullet train sequence, where Wolverine is on top of a bullet train traveling 300 miles per hour and killing people, because that's what he do. There's a lot more to love in this movie, a lot more than the previous installment, particularly about Wolverine's character. He has a very good story arc in this movie that delves into his humanity, as well as what he suffers through day in and day out after the events of X-Men 3. And again, Hugh Jackman kills it as the character of Wolverine. At this point, it's cemented that there's really no other person that can portray this character other than Hugh Jackman. Of course they're going to try, but I don't think they're ever going to be able to measure up to how great this actor has been with the character. They're able to flesh out the Wolverine's backstory a little more in this film and make it have a little bit more heart and more stakes than the previous film. However, what they were trying to do didn't necessarily represent what we ended up seeing in this film, which is kind of a mixed bag. While we get introduced to more characters that have interesting backstories, we don't get to spend a lot of time with them or learn more about them. We're following Wolverine mostly through the story, and when the big emotional moments come in, they don't have the impact they could have if they spent a little more time fleshing out these side characters. Not only are there too many villains to follow, but some of them are just way too cheesy. Take Viper, for instance. She was incredibly overselling her role, and any time that she had anything to say, it was only exposition to get us to the next scene. But those are just minor flaws in the film. The biggest flaw happens in the third act, where for some stupid reason they decide to do a 180 on everything the movie was starting to become, and just make it a weird fight between Wolverine and a Transformer ninja samurai robot. The entire film shifts in the end by doing this, and it undoes a lot of the great storytelling that the movie had set up before the final act. However, with all that said, Wolverine still is a good movie. It doesn't necessarily surmount to being a great movie, but it's a good movie. It has a lot of good action sequences, it has humor spread throughout. Hugh Jackman always does a great job playing this character, and I'm going to give the Wolverine a 6.5 out of 10. Once again, Jack, thank you so much for being on the channel. I really appreciate it. Guys, go and check out his channel, give it a thumbs up, watch some of his reviews, tell me what you think about him. If you like it, let him know. If you don't yell at him, but let him know. My review for Logan is coming out very soon. Make sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you again as always for watching, and I will see you at the next review.